Okay, so this first part of this video, and this is video part 1, and this video is about the hardware on your Les Paul. Now, the point of this whole video is to get vintage Les Paul tone. It's not about modding your guitar and putting titanium saddles or brass tailpieces or this or that. It's trying to show you how to take any Les Paul made by anybody and make it sound more like an actual original, but especially the ones that are being sold for really high prices at the factory in Nashville. So I'm going to go briefly over each of these parts, and then we'll get into each part in depth and show you what the vintage materials are and how they sound and what you should buy. And believe me, none of this stuff is very expensive unless you want it to be, and money isn't going to buy you accuracy unless you buy vintage parts. So first of all, we have the ABR1, and let's see, get this close in here. So this is a 1962 probably wired ABR1. These are basically the same as the unwired ones, but your saddles won't fall out. And they sound the same as the unwired ABR1s that are ridiculously expensive. But the thing about these vintage ABR1s is nobody has duplicated them yet. They're not looking at materials. They're not even looking at how the bridges are made. I mean, these are massive little bridges. They're a very flat top, and the angle is very low at the peak. The modern ones all have very sharp peaks, which makes the strings sound just way too bright, which is kind of sad, but nobody is doing any really good reverse engineering, or nobody even cares about this part. The closest I've found that it comes close to the sound of these is the Faber ABR-H, and I use all those in my own guitars. Next, we have the tailpiece anchor. This is the anchor. This is the bolt. Both of these were made with steel, not brass, not pot metal. And this was an inch long, and the shaft of this one is an inch long too. This is an incorrect modern bolt. You see it doesn't go to the bottom. Now this is the ABR1 post and thumb wheel. Vintage were always brass. On modern, almost no matter what you pay, you're getting steel wheels and often steel posts. Steel is a tone killer. It's dull sounding. You don't want to use steel. You can test with a magnet to see what is on your guitar. Now, some of the new true historics, they're finally using brass on both of these, and that's what was used, brass. Not steel, not stainless steel. Then we got the tailpiece itself. These were lightweight aluminum. They weighed anywhere from 27 grams to about 32 maximum. This is a modern Clouson. It's a little bit brighter than vintage ones, and way cheaper. This is about $15. You can pay Gibson $200 to get one like this, and it's pretty much the same part. So all these parts are what connects your strings to the body of your guitar. Your strings vibrate through the bridge, goes down through the saddles, through here, onto the thumb wheel, into the body of the guitar, and then the other end where your strings are anchored that vibration goes through the tailpiece, through the bolt, into the anchor, directly into the wood. So if you got these materials wrong, your guitar isn't going to sound like a vintage guitar. And that's my purpose in making this video, is to show you how to take any Les Paul and make it sound way closer to $1 million in sound, because you're getting the materials right. If the materials aren't the same or close as same to what was on original vintage Les Pauls, you're just not going to get there. You're going to buy pickups. You're going to keep trying different tone caps and pots and strings. But without this vibrational circuit here, you're just not going to get there. And why these manufacturers aren't doing this right boils down to profits. Brass is more expensive than steel. You can make way more steel parts than you can brass, and you get better profits. So I personally think that's disgusting, and that is part of this video, is to expose the deceit and the corporate mindset that is charging you thousands of dollars for an electric guitar that you're you want to get Les Paul, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, Beck, Peter Green. You want to get those tones, and unless you've got this thing doing right, it's not going to get there. There are some really easy tests you can do to kind of tell what vintage hardware is compared to modern replica stuff, or the stuff that Gibson is using on their guitars. And it's just acoustic resonance, which in simple terms just means bouncing parts off of a piece of wood, a wooden table or whatever. And so what we got right here is a vintage thumb wheel and a vintage ABR1 posts. And I've already tested these for content. They're both brass. So, and then also using a magnet is a really good way to tell if you're using steel or brass. So this is a pair of strong ceramic magnets, and as you can see, these aren't magnetic. And the only reason that it's holding this brass thumb wheel for briefly is it's because of eddy currents generated in it by the magnet. So it's brass, but a pretty strong magnet can attract it. So here's what a vintage bridge post sounds like. It's got a little bit of a ring to it. And the thick brass, well, it's not thick, it's a thin brass thumb wheel sounds like this. It's really too fat to do any kind of ringing sound. So here we have the parts from the 60 VOS and magnet test. Uh-oh. Thumb wheel is steel. It holds. You notice it's got a brighter bounce sound than the vintage. So this fails because it's steel and it's too bright sounding. So here, this is the VOS bridge post. Now it's not being attracted, but taking a file to it, there's no brass in this piece. And it's really bright sounding. And what it is stainless steel. So those add too much brightness and really helps your guitar to sound harsh, which you don't want, and which vintage guitars didn't. So here's the replica stuff that I use. I know these are both brass. No magnetic grab there. And actually, there's like almost zero attraction to this. So here's what the thumb wheel, the replica thumb wheel sounds like. That's my dog in the background. Vintage. A lot darker. And the replica brass post versus the original post. The replica is a little bit brighter, but it is brass, and it works. And it's not going to give you any harsh, high treble sounds like the VOS stuff will. So there you go. So here we have the aluminum tailpieces, which vintage on the classic $1 million old bursts were always aluminum. And they weighed between like 27 grams up to 31 grams. And so this one is a Cluson. You can buy these for about $15 on eBay. This one is the Gibson off the VOS. And here's how they sound. This is the Gibson. And the Cluson. Gibson. Gibson is slightly darker, and I believe they sell these for $200. The Cluson, it's about 15 bucks. Which one would you buy? So let's move on, and I'll let you see how the Cluson compares to actual vintage tailpieces here, and a clip from another video I did last year. Okay, vintage tailpieces, aluminum in grams. It's 28 grams. 2, 30 grams. 3, 30 grams. 4, 30 grams. 5, 30 grams. And 6, 32 grams. Okay, here's the modern ones. This is the Cluson, and I aged it. And what does it weigh? It weighs 32 grams. And this is the Goto, made in Japan, and it weighs 26. It weighs 28 grams, same as the vintage one I have on my guitar. Here's where things get interesting. This is the vintage tailpiece that I put on the guitar. Whoops. This is the Cluson that I aged. And this is the Goto. Yep. So they all almost weigh the same. The vintage one and the Goto weigh the same, but check this out. Cluson, so we got vintage, Cluson, Goto. So here we go. These are 3 more vintage ones. This one is early 50s because it's got these little sprue marks here in between the holes. That one is too. And that one is later. This is more like 59 era. So 50s, 50s, 59. They're all pretty much the same. So these 3 are also vintage. And they're all the same era. This one sounds really different than these other 2. So there you go. Okay, one correction here that I suspect changed the results of one of these. This is a vintage. These are both vintage, but this one sounds kind of dead. But it has these steel adjusters. I forget what you call them, but I think that may be making this one sound dead. So I'm going to take those out and see if it changes. So I got those taken out, and sure enough it changed. So this is the regular tailpiece, and here's the, I don't know when this one dates from. I don't think it's real early. So there you go. So what that means in practical terms is this tailpiece is very expensive. These are less expensive because of the Allen cinching down screw heads. So you can buy these a lot cheaper and get nearly almost identical to the more expensive one. So you just remove those and you got it.